Brilliant. So glad to be here. Welcome, everyone. Glad to be having this conversation. I was reflecting before we jumped in on how I write with my team all day about this concept of climate technology venture capital, CTVC. We kind of do what it says on the label of our publication. And yet we're speaking with someone who's single-handedly with his team personally helped deploy almost 9 billion, I think, at this point into climate venture, whereas we track around 80 billion or so over the past 2 years of capital. So call that 10% of the dollars having been deployed by Carl-Erik and his team right here, and yet you remain, in some part, one of the best kept secrets, I think, in climate tech, with narrowly 3 climate unicorns or gigacorns under your belt being built up in the Nordics. So thrilled to be kicking off this conversation to make some of these gigacorn names more household names, whether that's from Polarium to NorthVolt and now onto your third great hit of H2 Green Steel. So Carl-Erik, you need little introduction, though glad to be making your background more public here. Perhaps interesting to start with the fact that you have a career of almost 20 years of experience in the IT and teleco segments. And then in 2014 or so, almost had a coming back home moment, right? And starting Vargas with your co-founder. Let's kick it off, take it from the top, and talk a little bit about that moment in 2014 where Vargas got started. What was the impetus? What was the goal? And we'll reflect on how you've gotten here.
Yeah, well, thanks for the introduction, Sophie. Great to be on board and talk on topics which really is important in our time. And thinking back on when Harald Mix, my partner, and myself kicked off in 2014, I think it was about understanding the very large and important transformational macro trends that is sort of that we wanted to make sure that we were in a way deploying capital, but also from scratch founding companies that could really make change. And we started out with Polarium being a very a high-end power backup application company with the lithium-ion batteries for the telecom infrastructure sector. And it is as it has since we started it, founded it from scratch together with a super strong individual, Stefan Johnson, the CEO. I think that we clearly wanted to get in where we could make a difference, sustainability, but also the electrification taking place in that specific segment of and focus towards the telco industry and the relevance of these type of power backups technology. Then, and this is the way I think it's super important to be, because we wanted to do our want was to do a lot more with the same methodology of starting from scratch with the right individuals, making a very thorough, in-depth validation of the opportunity as such, but then not being an investor, but actually being an initiator and a founder, and then putting the right team together in order to capitalize on the opportunity. So shortly after Polarium, we started to realize that the dominance of the lithium-ion battery production value chain was totally based out of Asia, China and South Korea. And I came back from one board meeting, and I came away from a board meeting, and I thought that, hang on a second, this ain't right. This was way back before a lot of the geopolitics and I think wars and I think risks around supply chains was evident. But clearly, there was, from a European perspective, no value chain at all supporting the electrification within transportation and other verticals, including power backup in this case for the telco sector. Tesla moving up, actually moving up the value chain, integrating upwards, because they clearly saw the same needs for, really building their own supply chain in order to conquer the world on electrification. The industry was not there from a U.S. perspective. It was not there from a sort of volume perspective at all in a bigger terms. But and I saw that, I reflected on it, that they were moving up the value chain and starting their own battery production. So I reached out to a guy called Peter Carlson, today the CEO of NorthVolt, which is a company we founded based on that discussion. And the idea was to build the world's most greenest, low carbon footprint battery manufacturing setup, and in combination with that, the most competitive setup. Meaning that if we looked at that with a total greenfield approach, we knew that there was an opportunity to set that up. So I reached out to Peter, we sat down, and we had that blank sheet of paper, and we started NorthVolt. And I think from then on, we have continued to build that company. I'm still the chairman of it, and we've continued to build that company in close collaboration with a lot of other partners. So I think that was clearly a new model, setting up greenfield, do the in-depth validation, launch then with the right team. That's our methodology. That's how we work. And that's the same way we did it with H2 Green Steel, which came out of the same thinking around, hang on a second, there's a new value chain that needs to be set up. It's never been done before. The hydrogen-based steel making with electrolysis and at scale, and then direct reduction with hydrogen in order to build the world's biggest and most low carbon value chain for steel. Personally, I know that I had a deep conviction around this being, sustainable, and also not only that, but you should not only do it because it's sustainable. We love to do it, but you should combine it with being, actually located where you have the most renewable power and where it's priced adequately. So if you're able to do that, yet again, validate, orient, and set yourself up. And on top of that, you need to be able to fund all of this together as well. So that's a little bit of the starting point.
Indeed.
Where we started
and
how
starting
we're going.
greenfield, building from the ground up in hydrogen, steel, battery storage is no small feat, right? And requires not only the identification and kind of learnings from building all of those businesses back to back, but you need incredible resources to do so. So how is Vargas structured to be able to bring those players, those partnerships to the table to truly build greenfield industrial newcos?
Well, I think it's a good question. We're super light-footed in a sense because we work with a lot of highly experienced industrial advisors, and that we for every new venture that we look at, we like to combine the best of the intelligence and the resources that we believe are important for this specific task. And because I think that it's very hard to have too many, in-source resources which are looking at sort of on a general approach at investments. Mm-hmm. We go much more surgical than that. When we decide on something, we have an idea, but and that idea is that since we like to do it, we want to do it greenfield. We want to actually have no legacy, and that also to some extent brings in. We don't want to have too much legacy thinking, meaning that need to come afresh into the opportunity, and so resources are in abundance. But it's I like that bringing the generalists together and looking at an opportunity, the one who have experienced around, and then some specific, really superior, in-depth, competence you need to add to that as well. But if you were only going with the ones who really have experience from a certain industry, one thing that you would never to build a brand new industry, you would build more of the same.
You need to not come with the burden of having learned all of those hard lessons, or you would never get started again.
Absolutely, and I think many times it's been you've had there have been areas. I mean, looking at it from a historical approach of industry building. I mean, it's clearly such that all of the industries that needs transformation or disruption, very, very, very rarely it comes from within. And unfortunately, many times it comes too late.
And yet you're
for the
able to bring
companies
that
themselves.
new way of thinking with the kind of facts of what's happening, with the partnerships of, you can't build these greenfields without partnerships, without government relationships. And you're also able to tap, it seems, at least in one case with Peter Carlson, the talent that has learned the lesson in Peter's case at Tesla, but then has so much more room to run and ideas to explore. How do you unlock the capabilities of someone like Carlson and make coming and building with Vargas the most attractive place for talent like that?
I think it's a good question, and I think let me first I want to answer on the topic of how do you make it happen from an industrial perspective, and we have a firm belief about collaboration across the value chain, meaning that we bring together from the start the demand side, the customers, and the technology suppliers that are also interested to setting up new value chains, revolutionizing industries, and bringing them together in a very collaborative effort, and together with early stage industrial co-partners is of course setting a scene which makes you very strong in the sense of the funding community as well. So you need to align the interest across the value chain. That is why I continue to talk about the technology suppliers wanting it to happen, the demand side wanting it, but many times it is this is too capex heavy to put on their own balance sheet, even if they need the battery or the green steel or the whatever it might be. It is not. It's outside of what they normally do, which means that they do definitely don't, and it's many times very big capex items. So super important with that alignment of interest in combination with aligning with the regulatory framework in a way, and being an enabler for the politicians and the societal change. Because, I think a lot of times the regulatory framework that needs to let the policymakers thinking about this, they need the enabler to make it happen. And I mean, in a way, we are an enabler and have been in a European context, an enabler on two cases where we are sort of lighthouses for making the transformation happen. And when you are making it happen, it's like a snowball. It just keeps rolling. Where the policy making kicks in, the demand side is even stronger. The technology supplier wants it to happen in more, and suddenly the scale game kicks into it as well. So you get the cost of the technology on a downward slope, and the cost of the product, and then suddenly are on par with the existing value chain of each industry. And it's about understanding that and unlocking it, and then. Your second question was about the attracting relative competitiveness, and I think here it's very clear that if you want the relevant competence, you need to be super strong on at least first of all purpose. What we're doing it. We want to make sure that we are aligned with what society wants. We want to spearhead. We want to drive change. We want to be a disruptor. We don't want to be anyone taking the middle road. But instead, I believe very much that, you want to go all the way and prove the point that the society needs you. And in order to be part of that, in order to create that, what society needs, you want to have to be bold and brave. And we are a place where you can be bold and brave. And what an attraction. What a fantastic opportunity. And this is a super transformational point on a global level of the transformation out of a CO2-based society into an electrified society, and all of the different value chains that needs to be set up. What a lovely opportunity to do good and set up new value chains that can be sustainable for the future.
Some of the similarities, but also slight differences between the move fast and break things, Silicon Valley kind of trope, and it's almost like move fast and build things more inclusive and including. You've mentioned society so many times here in the Vargas model. We'll come up with a a clever name for this by the end of this conversation, I'm sure. But in the Swedish model and the Vargas model here, you're explicitly including society into that calculus. So tell us more. Is that from for you maybe, or for the companies that you're building? Do you consider that for impact or for bottom line? Is that on the supply side or the demand side? How are you explicitly incorporating society into these companies that you're building?
Yeah, I firmly, and I think this is sort of in the DNA, is to be well aligned with the societal needs, and meaning that you have to be in sync, and not go. You don't have to be. I think a lot of Silicon Valley is. I know that it's a lot about being counter. And I like, of course, being disruptive in the industry is very important and being bold in that. But I also think it's super. I like to work with and not against. I like to work with society, with with being an enabler for regulators or working together with industrial partners. And I also want to be open, super open with our customers, because the demand side really wants to be there. But to some extent, if you're not open, if you feel that you have a normal sort of seller-buyer relationship, you keep your cards very close to your chest. I think you need to be inclusive there. Then you make things happen much faster. And I think on that, of course, if you look at it from a Swedish perspective, I think we are very good at building. We're happy that we have some very large export-oriented global companies. And I think, and I like that collaborative approach. Some people think that it's too much collaboration and less sort of making decisions. And, you got to think on a lot of, you have to ponder and discuss before you make that decision. I think you can do. I don't think that the collaboration is not about taking time or actually slowing down. It's about aligning interest and being fast on taking action. So and I think here combining the being an enabler and thinking about how we are part of a society and reading into how you need to, in order to be relevant, you want to be part of that. And I think that is clearly in the DNA of what we're doing, but I think also another aspect of this is that the total focus on competitiveness, because if you truly want to build next generation industry, you got the sustainability angle and you got the competitiveness angle. And I think when you get both those two right, and I have a super focus on the competitiveness. That's for, you based on the greenfield approach, you can establish yourself on with the prerequisites from a you're thinking at it from a geographic perspective. And I think that's super important as well. So never forget that, but always have in mind the combination.
Do you think that this collaborative approach, building greenfield up, can be replicated outside of northern Sweden and Europe to other geographies? I'm thinking the increasingly more and more the modern industrial strategy approach, very focused on supply side here in the US, kind of in combination with the true venture model. And then potentially another triangulation comparison point would be the very authoritarian top-down approach that's happening in China that's entirely focused on deploy. It seems like you sit somewhere between innovate and deploy. Is there something special in the water up there in northern Sweden, or do you think that this model is transferable?
No, I definitely transferable from that perspective. But I think it's around, first of all, on the transferability. Yes, I think for me one important part, which will be a predominant decision factor going forward for industries, is energy. The opportunity to have the power you need to build value chain. So meaning that you go from having in principle having opportunity to set up production where you had logistics right or the demand side was there, but now there will be a change because renewable energy will be certainly in hot demand when you have demand for large scale And then that energy geography will actually be so important for, and that's the way I'm looking at it, that's going to drive the setup of new value chains much more than it has done before. So that is one important factor of that. But and then therefore, where you have the renewables, especially what I like to say is the continuous production of power, meaning that the hydropower, I think, has a really great value. And of course, I love the wind and the solar, but it is intermittent. And for the really large scale industrial ventures, you want that constant production of power. The other one on sort of, how do you entice development? Of course, I love to see the demand side. And I rely a lot on the demand side when making, validation. Of course, you never want to, rely too much on sort of pointers from government and incentive schemes. I think that is important, and I think that should be, part of the agenda. But you need to build if you want to build really long-term sustainable production platforms and value chains, you have to orient yourself on the long-term demand side, clearly, unless you are China, because then it's directed. What you should do, if you are an industrialist, you do this, and you get all this sort of, it's what I would call as a layup. It's like, just make sure to make it happen. And I think that's clearly a completely different system. But so the answer, on the question from my side, if you look at it from how do you want to orient yourself around this, I think you clearly understand the demand side and make the conclusion based on competitiveness that you create based on that, and not on the pointers from or incentives from the regulatory authorities and politicians.
Brilliant. So much in that. I heard clean energy generation as not only now part of national security, right, but also a backbone for being able to build across these many industries that we encompass in this definition of climate tech. So you need that constant, very low cost, clean energy generation in order to be able to build in agriculture or industrials, et cetera. And then clearly hearing demand first from your approach. One question, so interesting with the holding model, kind of holding model style side here. I keep reflecting on climate tech, and perhaps have learned this lesson from Elon Musk more than anybody else, but so much of climate tech scaling is a cost of capital game. You strike me as very different from Elon Musk in large part of, I don't believe you maybe have a Twitter account, and you're driving the cost of capital down in different ways. What do you think that other people get wrong or right around this capitalization of innovative hard tech companies?
I think it's we have a clear model, and I think here this is a competitive advantage. I think of understanding and just to because the cost of capital is going to be really the deciding factor if you're going to deploy a lot of capex or not. I mean, you have to have that model figured out super strongly, and based on what I said before, I would like to say you start out by triangulating all of the aspects into getting yourself into the most competitive positioning. That means on the lowest CO2, on the lowest cost of energy, in the right logistics, and all of that. Those are aspects that comes out of the validation phase. It says, gets you set up. If you're right there, and then you take that and you have that approach. If you're right there and you think, yes, I like what I'm seeing here. This will be global competitiveness in an where there is actually sort of on the supply side, which is constrained, that not going to meet up on the demand side for many years. If you make that validation, the setup is correct. The demand side, there will be a much stronger demand for many years to come. If that's if you read it that way and you set yourself up, then you're super strong to the core. Then you apply, how do we fund this multi-billion investment or factory, whatever it might be? Well, then you need to get that collaboration into motion, because you need to really get the appetite from the capital itself that is looking at this, and if they read the same as you do, they will be interested. But unless they see the demand side come forth, they are never going to invest the type of capital they need, because this is not venture capital to a large extent. This is much more industrial capital. And industrial capital need that long-term, supply side, so demand side in order. So then you're back to the demand side, and the demand side will be there if you have the most competitive platform. And the demand side will then unlock the equity that needs to go in, and the debt, the senior debt and the mezzanine debt. And then you have a demand side, which is, in a way created by the, excess demand for the specific product over a long period of time. And then you put that into the equation of financing, and then you have a long-term financing model, which is which is what you need in order to actually be able to put that big capex item into place in the right location.
The climate capital stack, right, you could say, is seriously much more complex than just venture capital, and requires the equity, debt, partnerships, JVs, et cetera, to reach the scale like some of these businesses that you've already gotten started. So I think we're somewhat at time. We could go for much longer, but thank you for joining us. Thank you for building. Wonderful you've already brought these companies to the global stage. Nice for SOSV to now find you to bring your story and the story of Vargas a bit more global as well. And looking forward to much more soon. So thank you very much, Carl-Erik.
Thanks for having me. Take care, everybody.